They didn't wait for the right time. They didn't get coached on how to stay quiet. They came out young, raw, honest, and unfiltered. And Hollywood didn't know what to do with them. These were rising stars, going viral, winning fans, making headlines. But the moment they said, "I'm gay," everything changed. Not with a scandal, not with a headline. Just silence. Calls stopped. Roles disappeared. Buzz faded. In this episode of Rainbow Spotlight, we're looking at 5 brave young men who told the truth before the industry was ready to hear it, not because they had to, but because they refused to lie. Top 3 will have you questioning how far we've really come. Where are you watching from? Comment your city and a number from 1 to 5 to tell us which story hit hardest. Grayson Chance, the YouTube prodigy. Hollywood wasn't ready for Grayson Chance's story, didn't begin in a Hollywood casting office. It started at a school talent show in Edmond, Oklahoma. He was 12 years old when a video of him performing Lady Gaga's Paparazzi went viral on YouTube. The internet lit up. Ellen DeGeneres signed him to her new label. Headlines called him the next Justin Bieber. But unlike Bieber, Grayson wasn't just a heartthrob in the making. He was a deeply introspective kid navigating sudden fame, overwhelming expectations, and a growing realization that he was gay. By the time he was 16, Grayson did something few male pop artists had ever done at that age. He came out publicly. No tabloid leak, no dramatic press release, just an honest post on social media. "I came to fully realize that I was gay when I was 16. For him, it wasn't a branding moment. It was a step toward survival. But while fans applauded his courage, the industry hesitated. The major label deals dried up. His handlers didn't know how to market a young gay artist who wasn't trying to be a mainstream heartthrob. TV appearances slowed. Radio stations stopped spinning his songs. Some people in the music world treated his coming out not as growth, but as a disruption. Behind the scenes, Grayson was battling something deeper: anxiety, depression, and a lingering feeling that his career had been derailed by his honesty. He later spoke openly about feeling abandoned by Ellen's label, calling the support performative. He was left to rebuild not just his image, but his sense of self. For years, he disappeared from the spotlight entirely, going to college, rediscovering music on his own terms, and slowly crafting his identity as an artist again. Then came 2019's Portraits, a moody, beautifully vulnerable album that marked his creative rebirth. The boy who had once been sold as a viral phenomenon returned as a man in control of his sound, his truth, and his story. Grayson now speaks openly about the toll of coming out so young in an industry that punishes authenticity when it's inconvenient. He's not bitter. He's empowered. He's found his voice again, this time without apology. And that's what makes his story so important. He didn't flame out, he evolved. He's not a cautionary tale. He's proof that talent, when paired with truth, survives. It may take longer, it may come with more pain, but it resonates deeper. Drop a 1 if you remember the paparazzi video. Drop it again if you didn't know what he went through after. Geick, the wrestler who pinned stereotypes to the mat. Geick wasn't supposed to exist, not in the world of high school wrestling. He was tall, lean, strong, and openly gay in a sport that's often hypermasculine, quietly homophobic, and resistant to change. And yet, by the time he was 17, Dylan had not only come out, he'd gone viral. In 2016, a personal essay he wrote for his high school newspaper, where he publicly came out as gay, gained national attention. But it wasn't just his honesty that caught fire, it was where he came from. Dylan wasn't a theater kid or a YouTube creator. He was an elite high school wrestler, a jock with a jawline, and someone who looked like every leading man in a CW drama. He shattered every assumption about what a gay teen could be. And in doing so, he became something rare, a real-life contradiction. On the wrestling mat, Dylan was fierce, disciplined, and respected by teammates. Off the mat, he posted poetry on Instagram, shared vulnerable essays, and documented his relationship with then-boyfriend Jackson Kresiach in a way that felt more honest than curated. He didn't try to fit the mold of a queer icon, and that made him one. But visibility came with consequences. As Dylan's platform grew, so did the pressure. Online, he was praised for breaking barriers, but behind the scenes, he was navigating a torrent of bullying, media attention, and identity policing from both inside and outside the LGBTQ+ community. He wasn't queer enough, or he was too queer, or he was just dating another influencer for clout. The world projected 1 million narratives onto him, but Dylan rarely got to write his own. After graduating, Dylan took a break from the spotlight and joined the U.S. Army. It shocked everyone. Why would one of the internet's most visible young gay voices enlist in an institution that had only recently lifted its ban on open service? Simple. Dylan does things on his own terms. For him, the military wasn't about optics. It was about purpose, discipline, and service. And even there, he didn't hide who he was. He lived out loud, just as he had in high school. Still writing, still training, still pushing against everything people thought they knew about masculinity and queerness. Now, in his mid-20s, Dylan Geick isn't chasing viral fame. He's writing more, talking less, and continuing to redefine what it means to be openly gay in spaces that weren't built for it. He's a poet and a fighter, a jock and a softie, and a reminder that being out, especially as a teenager, isn't just brave, it's revolutionary. Drop a 3 if Dylan shattered a stereotype you didn't even realize you had. And tell us where in the world you're watching from. We're building this archive together. Jakob Greer, the TikTok heartthrob who came out in real time. Jakob Greer, better known online as Greerzy, wasn't planning to be a queer trailblazer. He just wanted to make people laugh. With boy-next-door looks, a cheeky sense of humor, and the kind of charm that TikTok eats up, Jakob quickly amassed millions of followers during the app's explosive early days. But behind the thirst traps and comedy skits was something far more raw and rare. Jakob was figuring himself out in real time, and his followers were watching every moment. In 2020, speculation about his sexuality started popping up in the comments. At first, he played it coy, flirting with the curiosity, laughing it off, leaving just enough ambiguity to keep fans guessing. But for queer viewers, something clicked. His softness, his sensitivity, his comfort with being perceived as different. There was something there. And then came the moment that changed everything. Without a slick YouTube confessional or a media campaign, Jakob casually came out as bisexual in a TikTok reply. It wasn't loud, it wasn't rehearsed, it was human. And that, ironically, made it revolutionary. In an internet culture obsessed with aesthetics, performative vulnerability, and coming out as a big brand opportunity, Jakob just said it. He didn't rebrand, he didn't monetize it. He let it exist, and while that honesty won him even more queer fans, it also came with a price. Suddenly, the thirst trap algorithm started working against him. His content wasn't pushed as much. Some brand partnerships quietly faded. Conservative commenters flooded his videos with slurs and backlash. He went from everyone's favorite straight TikTok boy to a bisexual creator navigating the chaos of being authentic online. To his credit, Jakob didn't shrink. He leaned in. He posted videos about biphobia. He called out toxic masculinity in his DMs. He used his platform to talk about how coming out doesn't mean changing who you are. It just means being honest. For thousands of young queer teens, especially bisexual boys who rarely see themselves represented, Jakob became more than a TikToker. He became proof that softness and masculinity aren't opposites, and that you can own both without compromise. But the real twist? Jakob is still redefining himself. He hasn't slapped a label on every part of his identity. He hasn't conformed to what the LGBTQ+ community or the algorithm expect from him. And in a space where people are often punished for evolving too slowly or too honestly. That's pretty radical. Jakob Greer may not have set out to be a queer role model. But in the age of filters and edits, being real might be the most influential thing he's ever done. Drop a 2 if you've ever seen one of his TikToks before you knew he was bi, and drop it again if his story surprised you. Zyrus, from teen idol to true self. Before he was Zyrus, he was Carice, one of the biggest musical prodigies the world had ever seen. Born in the Philippines, Jake became an international sensation by the time he was a teenager, thanks to a jaw-dropping voice, powerful ballads, and endorsements from Oprah and Celine Dion. In the late 2000s, he was everywhere: Ellen, The Oprah Winfrey Show, Glee, and hailed as the next big thing. But behind the scenes, Jake was battling something much bigger than stage fright. He wasn't just a young artist managing fame. He was a trans boy trapped in the image of a pop star the world expected to stay cute, feminine, and palatable. And no one in the industry was ready to hear that story. At just 18, Jake came out as a lesbian. It made headlines, especially in his home country of the Philippines, where LGBTQ+ representation was sparse and often treated as comedy or scandal. But the backlash was immediate. He lost endorsements, bookings slowed down, and media narratives shifted from prodigy to problematic. Then, in 2017, Jake did something even more radical. He came out as a transgender man. It should have been a triumphant moment of truth. Instead, it was career suicide, at least from the perspective of the industry that once built him up. Suddenly, the world that once couldn't get enough of Carice wanted nothing to do with Jake. Major labels stopped calling, international media outlets moved on, and Jake Zyrus, the man, the artist, the human, was left to rebuild from the ground up. But he didn't disappear. He released independent music, toured in the Philippines, and began telling his story with the raw honesty that only comes from living it. No longer forced into the pop star mold, Jake's work became more personal, more powerful, and more liberating. Still, the silence from Western media remained deafening. The same outlets that once praised his voice didn't know what to do with his identity. His journey challenged too many norms, disrupted too many comfortable narratives. He went from being marketed as Asia's Celine Dion to a quiet pioneer, visible but often ignored. And yet, in 2024, Jake Zyrus stands tall as a symbol of self-determination. He didn't lose his voice, he finally found it. And in a landscape that still punishes authenticity, that's more powerful than any top 40 hit. His journey isn't just a coming-out story. It's a confrontation with the way fame demands performance over personhood. Jake proved that being true to yourself may cost you everything you thought you needed, and still be the greatest decision you ever make. Drop a 4 if Jake's bravery changed how you see fame, gender, or your own identity. We see you, and we're watching from every corner of the world. Let's keep building this archive of truth. Josh Thomas, the boy who made awkward feel brave. Josh Thomas didn't storm Hollywood with a blockbuster or headline-grabbing romance. Instead, he arrived quietly, with awkward pauses, self-deprecating jokes, and a brain that never quite filtered things like everyone else's. And that's exactly why people fell in love with him. Born in Australia, Josh became a household name in his home country as a teenage stand-up comic, winning Raw Comedy at just 17. But his breakthrough came with the semi-autobiographical TV series Please Like Me, which he created, wrote, and starred in, playing a version of himself coming out in the most human, awkward, and deeply relatable way. What made Josh different wasn't just his voice or his humor, it was his vulnerability. He didn't come out with a rainbow flag and a speech. He came out mid-conversation, in between a mental health crisis and an overcooked omelet. And in doing so, he changed what queer representation on screen could feel like. He wasn't a stereotype. He wasn't tragic or overly sexualized. He was just Josh. Unapologetically awkward, deeply anxious but radically open. Please Like Me tackled topics like coming out, anxiety, depression, and navigating gay relationships without glamour or shame. And it hit hard, especially for young queer people who had never seen their quiet chaos reflected with so much honesty. But while his show gained critical acclaim and a cult following, Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with him. He wasn't the conventionally hot gay guy. He didn't fit the polished, marketable mold. He was quirky, neurodivergent, and openly unsure of himself. And the industry, always image-focused, hesitated. Josh came out publicly at 19, and while Australia embraced him, international recognition was slower. Streaming services picked up Please Like Me years after its original airing, giving him belated global visibility. But even then, many executives seemed unsure whether Josh was leading man material or just a niche writer. When he launched his next series, Everything's Gonna Be Okay, in the US, he pushed even further, casting neurodivergent and queer actors, exploring topics like grief, asexuality, and autism with the same unfiltered honesty. The series was critically praised, but again, it didn't become a mainstream juggernaut. Why? Because Josh was still doing things on his terms, not packaging his queerness into palatable formats. His career is a quiet rebellion. In an industry that rewards loud confidence, Josh thrives in the discomfort. In a space that often erases nuance, he leans into it. And in a world that demands clarity, he offers complexity. He's proof that not every gay icon wears glitter. Some wear wrinkled shirts and talk too fast. Josh Thomas didn't just come out. He built a career around showing what it really looks like to be figuring things out. And for a lot of us, that was the most honest kind of representation we'd ever seen. Drop a 5 if you saw yourself in Josh and tell us, did his work help you feel less alone? Some stars light up the screen. Others quietly shift the way we see ourselves. These 5 young men didn't just come out. They cracked open conversations, challenged stereotypes, and made space for queerness long before the world was ready to embrace it fully. They were too real, too honest, and too brave for Hollywood's comfort zone. In a system that still favors marketable mystery over lived truth, coming out young can feel like career sabotage. But these stories prove something bigger. That visibility, even when it comes with consequences, still changes lives. So, who moved you the most? Who made you feel seen? Drop a 1 to 5 below and tell us why. And if you're watching from somewhere the industry still tries to erase voices like these, know this: you're not alone, and your story matters too. Subscribe for more untold LGBTQ+ stories every week on Rainbow Spotlight.